Hello and welcome to the product demo of my food program software for sponsors of family daycare homes. I'm going to start by showing you the agenda here. We will begin with an overview of the features of my food program. Then we will dig into the specific features, attendance and meal counts, menus, participants, invoicing, expense tracking, claims, and monitoring. If you are particularly interested in one of those features, feel free to advance in the video and skip right to the one that you want. So let's start with an overview. I'm going to show you what your providers would see when they first log in to my food program. So up here would be their name, their provider name. Here would be the logo of your sponsorship. Up here is a dashboard that shows the provider some helpful reminders. This one is about their claim status, how many days are missing meal counts. If they are going to be collecting income forms, the prompts are here for that. Enrollment forms, how many days they still need to enter menus for, and whether they still need to get their training done for the year. Then down here are the different buttons that take you to the different functions. So menu is where they put in the foods that they serve. Side-by-side entry is for attendance and meal counts. Participants and rosters is where they enter the names and information for the children in their care. Staff is for the provider themselves or their co-provider, so their username and password. Here in site details is how their specific site is configured. It's view only for the provider, but of course the sponsor can go in and set the different configurations. Closure field trip is here for the providers to provide prior notification so that the sponsor monitor doesn't show up when no one is there. Expenses is here for the providers to track their expenses related to their business for their end of year taxes. Submit to sponsor is here for once the month is over and they want to send their attendance and meal counts up to you as the sponsor so that they can process their claim. Reports has all the information that they want to know about attendance, meal counts, or claims, participants, expense, that sort of thing. Record hours is here if the provider is choosing to record how much time they spend providing care in the event they need that for their tax records or something else. And then visits is here for them to view the monitoring reviews that they've received from their sponsor. Okay, let's move on to showing attendance and meal counts. So to get to attendance and meal counts, we click here on side-by-side entry. Up at the top, you'll see the date, the roster, and the meal. Now, as a provider, they can obviously never go forward in time. And then depending on your configuration, they can also not go backwards in time. So it is locked down to the date of the meal itself. A roster is just a way to sort participants. So most home providers just have one list of all children, but they could also have a list of, say, summer-only children, or they might divide it up into, before and after school kids and then, the all-day kids. However you wish to sort them is fine with us. So you have to select a roster. And then here, my only choice is breakfast because it's early in the morning at the time that I am recording this demo, and you cannot obviously take meal counts in advance. So here's a list of the children that are on this roster. Here's just their ID number in the system. Present means that they're in attendance today, and then 8 is that they ate the meal. So if I try to click right here on the 8 button, you'll see that I'm unable to do that. And that is because we require attendance to be taken before you can check the child in for the meal. So that helps to prevent the case of a meal count being present without an accompanying attendance record. Of course, you can always select attendance without selecting a meal. They can obviously be present in your care, but not be eating a meal. And of course, attendance and meal count records are completely separate. So attendance records are not used to generate meal count records, neither are meal count records used to create attendance records. So the provider would just click through and say who was present that day and who was eating. Once you get this attendance marked for the day, then in subsequent meals during the day, they don't have to check the child in for attendance multiple times a day, just once. Click Save, and that's all there is to taking attendance and meal counts. All right, let's continue our discussion of attendance and meal counts by showing you how providers can take attendance and meal counts using a mobile app. So they have the choice of doing the attendance and meal counts using any device with a web browser, or they can use our mobile app. So that is what I'm going to show you now. So if you search on Google Play or the Apple Play Store for My Food Program, you'll see two results. This one with a green background is what we're looking for. This is for attendance and meal counts. I'm going to show you this one later. This is about paperless reviews. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open that. And I'm going to go ahead and log in. And my only choice here is to take my side-by-side attendance and meal counts. And I need to select the roster, and I need to select the meal. Up here, you'll see the date is already set to today, so I can't change it, which is great because that means I can't make a mistake. So just like the web version, I can't click a participant in for a meal until I've checked them in for attendance. I can obviously check a child in for attendance, but not a meal. That is completely fine. Again, attendance records and meal records are completely separate. So attendance is not used to generate meal counts. Meals counts are not used to generate attendance. You'll see this countdown down here. There's an auto submit feature. So if the provider clicks people in, then sets their phone down or their tablet down, it will auto submit after 20 seconds. You can change the amount of time, so it can be less or it can be more, depending on your preferences. If they make a mistake, they can always go back and edit the data so they can, oh yeah, Jane didn't end up eating, so I am gonna resubmit the data. Then that is how they would enter those meal counts. And so then that is transferred instantly over onto the web version. So if I pull up this site and I look at today for all children for PM snack, you'll see the same data. So they were all here. Bethany, Dale, Jane, and John were all here, and it was Bethany and John that ate. And let's look at that. Yep, it's the same data. So it's that simple to take attendance and meal counts using our mobile app. All right, it's time to move on to menus. So for the provider to enter their menus, they click here on this fork and knife icon. Up here at the top, you'll see two buttons. One says Favorite Foods, the other says View Menus. Favorite Foods has a list of all of the foods in our database, and the provider is able to designate those items that they serve over and over again. So that saves them from needing to search our food database every time they want to add a food to their menu. Here, View Menus, these are the saved menus. And so that's if they have, for example, a cycle menu, or they just kind of serve the same thing over and over and they don't want to enter each food item individually. So I'll show you where that comes in here in just a second. Down below here, you'll see a calendar for the month. So they can, of course, select the month and year up here. And this is customizable. So if the provider, for example, is closed on Fridays, then you won't see anything here for Fridays. And similarly, if they serve breakfast, AM snack, and lunch instead of what it says here, breakfast, lunch, and PM snack, then that is what you would see on there instead. So what we try to do is prevent a mistake from happening in the first place by not showing them something that they are not supposed to click. So to plan a menu, then they click on the date and the meal type. So let's say we're going to do one for breakfast. Over here, you'll see Edit Menu. So that's for the child menu. If they want to do an infant menu, then that's below here. So you click Edit Menu. Up here, you'll see again the date and the meal type as a reminder. Description for print view, this is just a text box, so they can type in anything that they want. And then that description is what will show up if they want to go ahead and print their menu, maybe post it on the bulletin board for the parents or send it out. So you can put something friendly in there, like milk, peaches, and oatmeal, for example. If there were saved menus, and I believe there are, yes, there are, for this meal type, you'll see them here. So these are saved menus. If they click on one of these, then all the food items are going to populate. They click save and they're done. For the purpose of this demo, I am going to show you how they would build one from scratch. So by selecting each food item. Here you'll see the required food components for this meal type. So breakfast, we obviously need fluid milk, fruit or vegetable, and then grains or meat alternate. So let's start with fluid milk. Here's where this favorite foods come in. So instead of getting if they want to use search food, they can. They'll look through our entire food database, but it's way quicker to have these favorite foods here. So I'll kind of show you here. So this one has them set to, here's apples, applesauce, bananas. So it's very quick. You can just select the item that you want on there. And then what shows up is a reminder of the portions for each age range. So toddlers get a quarter cup of fruit at breakfast. The other age ranges get a half a cup. So that's a good reminder for the providers. Up here, fluid milk will just designate that children who are 2 and older get 1% milk, and then children younger get whole milk. In that 1 year age range, of course, children under 12 months are receiving iron fortified infant formula or breast milk. Then grains or meat alternate here. I think we said it was oatmeal that we were going to have. Yep, it's not in there. So what I'm going to, in my favorite foods, so I'm going to go ahead and search for oatmeal. You'll see I got 5 results for oatmeal, so I'm going to find the one that I want. So I'm not looking at oatmeal cereal, I am looking at cooked oatmeal. This WGR here stands for whole grain rich, so those items are designated in our database as meeting the requirement for whole grain rich. So we're going to click save, and you'll see a summary here of what's going on. If we go back to the menu calendar, you'll see something pop up here. So what you'll see is a fork and knife icon. That means that a menu has been entered for the day. And down here, you'll notice that this little wheat chef here has turned green. So when it's gray like this, it means the whole grain requirement is not met. If it is green, then the whole grain requirement is met. So that gives a nice visual as they would go through and obviously plan more meals throughout the month, and they would see those different icons turn green. And if they're missing one, then they could make sure that they entered that meal correctly. Providers can also copy meals from one week to another. And then in terms of the food database, just a note that providers are not able to add their own foods. And the reason for that is to prevent them from making any mistakes. For example, adding corn as a grain or something to that effect when we know that that's not how that counts. So we control the food database up here. And so if you need a food entered, we will do that right away for you. Just let us know what that food happens to be. All right, I think that's it for the menu functionality. Our next topic is participants. So this is where the providers are going to enter information about the children and the parents or guardians. So to get to participants, you click here on participants and rosters. Up here at the top, this is a list of all the rosters you have. We find that for home providers, there's usually just one roster. They might have more than one. For example, they might have a roster of inactive children. They might have a list of summer-only children, things like that. You can have as many rosters as you want. Down below here, you'll see a list of the children in care, their ID number that's assigned by the system. The provider can change it or you can change it. What roster they're on, their birth date, then their parent or guardian is here, and then the city and their status. Up here, you will see some options. So upload participants is here. That would be if you were uploading from a spreadsheet and you were going to import it from a different system. Add to existing household is here if you needed to add a child to a household that already exists. For example, mom had a new baby and they're going to be enrolling in your care. You're going to want to add them to the existing household so that you can keep the structure, the links of the children to the parents in place. Add new household is when a new family enrolls and you need to add the information. So I will actually be demonstrating that in just a second. And then print participant list would be if the provider or you needed a list of the participants for some reason. That creates a file that you can go ahead and print. So I'm going to show how you would add a new household because that will demonstrate sort of how the structure works. So up here at the top, we have their address, city, state, zip code. This is optional information. So if there is another system that you're using to keep track of the parents' addresses, great. If you don't have another way to do that and you want to use our software to do that, that's also fine. Here is information about the guardian. So to add a guardian, you click here and you say add guardian. So then we'll just add a name in here. We'll say Rose Thomas is the mom's name. Again, you can put in their phone number and their email address if you want to use our system for when you need to do those household contacts. If you don't want to do that, also fine. Primary guardian, that means that then they'll show up linked to that household as the primary. So you click save. Now you can see her name shows up here. Then to add children, so you're going to want to group them by household. So if this is the mom, then we're going to enter the children here. Click add participant. So we put in their first name. So say the name is Benjamin. And the last name, Moore. And then birth date is required. Obviously, that's so that we know what age group they're in for any license capacity checks and also for any meal pattern groups. So let's say that they're a baby and they were born in April. Okay, then the other required field that we need is start date. So when do you want to start claiming this child for the CACFP? So let's say they are starting tomorrow. The other statuses on here, these are optional fields. Again, if you want to use our system to record these things, fabulous. If you don't, then we don't require you to do unnecessary data entry. So date withdrawn would be if the child leaves your care and you don't want them on your lists anymore. Gender, so Benjamin is a boy. Then status. So there are 4 status on here. Active means that, everything's all good to go. And they do show up then on attendance and meal count screens. Inactive will drop that child to the bottom of your list of participants, and it will also mean that that child's name doesn't appear on any of the attendance and meal count screens anymore. So once they are set to inactive, then they drop off those lists, and that is so that the provider doesn't accidentally enter, in an attendance and meal count for a child who's no longer there. These other 2 function similarly to active. So a child in pending status and a child in incomplete status will still show up on your attendance and meal count screens. The sponsors use these statuses for their own record keeping. So in a lot of cases, what I see for incomplete is that the child's there, but you don't have an enrollment form yet. But you still want the provider to be collecting attendance and meal counts on that child until you get that enrollment form back in your office. Pending might be that they haven't started care yet, but you're not sure exactly which day it's going to be, so you want them on that list. However you want to use those is fine. So we'll set Benjamin here to active. Allergies, if you enter anything in here, then it will pop up on the mobile app as a reminder of any food allergies. Roster assignment is which roster you want them to be on. They can be on more than one roster if the provider has more than one. Race and ethnicity is here if you need to do your required reporting around the race and ethnicity of the children that are receiving the CACFP benefits. So we'll say that we'll do white and not Hispanic. This information here, rate type, rate, and school day rate, is here for invoicing purposes. So if the provider is going to use our system to send invoices to parents for care, then this is where they designate, is this child charged by the hour, by the day, or by the week? Let's say it's by the week, and then we'll say how much that is, $250, and then school day rate, that's not going to apply to an infant, so we will just leave that alone. Down here are some additional boxes. So provider's child, you would check that if it's the child of the provider, and if that is the only child that is checked in for a meal, then obviously that will not make it to a claim. CACFP is here to designate whether the child should be included in the claim or not. That one's checked by default. The only reason that you would uncheck that box would be if you need to continue to collect attendance data to monitor license capacity, but the child should not be included in the claim. So the best example of this would be a child with a dietary need that is not related to a medical condition, and so they provide their own meals. And so obviously the provider's not going to claim those meals, but you still want the data for the child to be recorded for, again, those license capacity checks. Receive subsidized care is for those sponsors who need to track the percentage of children that receive subsidized care separately from any other data. This one doesn't apply so much to family daycare homes. That's for the after school program. Then foster child will designate that child as a foster child, and their meals will be paid then automatically at the tier 1 rate. Here is where you can do schedules for the participants. So again, optional to record it in our system, but if you want to, here it is. So let's say Benjamin comes from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and he comes Monday through Friday, and we expect that he is going to eat breakfast, lunch, and afternoon snack. So then that schedule shows up here. This is where you would enter an enrollment form for this child. In this case, I'm logged in as a provider, and so I can't add the enrollment form. That's a function that the sponsor needs to perform, and that's, again, for the making sure that the record keeping is correct. Infant meal notifications, so this is where they would record, if they want to, whether the parent is providing the formula or they are providing the formula, and then also who is providing the solid food source. And then if they needed to record a special diet statement, for example, they wanted to add in a scanned document of that the doctor has signed talking about any special dietary needs, then they would add those there. So I'm going to click save, and we are going to add, so now you can see Benjamin here is associated with this household. Household income statement, it says not available here because that is a function for the sponsor. So in the spirit of data privacy here, they wouldn't have any information then about the household income for this family. Then down here, this is invoices and payments for the family, and I will show you that when I show you invoicing. So that's about it when it comes to adding participants and rosters. When I click save, you can see that Benjamin is now added to our participant list. Our next topic is invoicing and expense tracking. So I'm going to show you how a provider would invoice a household for care. We start by going into participants and rosters, and we need to find the family that we are sending the invoice to. So I'm going to show you an invoice being sent to Susan Johnson. So to generate an invoice, you would select which parent you are going to be putting on the invoice, and you click this button that says invoice. What pops up on the screen here then is a way to select the beginning and last date of care. So I'm going to send a bill for the first 2 weeks of July. So this first week and this first week here. So I'm going to go from the 1st to the 12th. Down here, you'll see the children and their rates that are in the system. So when you set up a participant, you select what their rate is and the frequency of that. So is it by the hour, is it by the day, or is it by the week? So here you can see Bethany is charged $200 a week, whereas Dale is charged $50 a day. So once I click calculate childcare, the system will look at July 1st through the 12th and figure out how many weeks was Bethany there and how many days was Dale there. So I'm going to click calculate. It says Bethany was there both of those weeks, so we're going to charge her $400. Dale, he was there for 8 days, and at $50 a day, that actually also turns out to be $400. So their bill for 2 weeks of care is $800, and down here is the ability to add any fees and discounts. So let's say that you had to assess a late pickup fee on July 3rd, and you charge them $20 for that. And we would do update subtotal, and now it says $820. If they've already paid, then this is where you link a payment. I will show you that in just a minute, but for right now, I'm going to click Generate Invoice. So then down here, you can see the invoice. So it gives it a number, and it gives you, of course, a summary. And then here's where you can view or download the invoice so that you can email it directly to the parent. So if I click Download, then you will see the invoice pop up. So here's the invoice. It would have the provider's name, of course, up here, their tax ID if they entered that, all that information. And so here's the invoice then that you would email out to the parent. Once they pay this invoice and you want to mark it as paid, then you click here, Add Payment. Until a payment is added, the provider can, of course, delete the invoice if it's inaccurate, but once we've linked a payment to an invoice, then it's stuck there. So you would have to clear the payment first before you would be able to delete the invoice. So if you click Add Payment, this screen will look familiar. So this is what we had calculated before, and you say, okay, they paid by check, and they paid all $820. We click Update, and now this invoice has been marked as paid. And you can see here, I can no longer delete this invoice, and then my payment shows up here. So then these invoices and payments are populated onto reports, so they can generate a W-10 automatically for this household. It also adds to their revenue summary for the year, so it'll add $820 of revenue onto their books for the taxes and record keeping. And then it would also then add to any sort of detailed bill for this household for Susan Johnson. So that's invoicing. Now I'm going to show you expense tracking. So for the provider to track their expenses, you go into expenses, and you can see there aren't any in here yet so far. So what they would do is add an expense, enter the date that it was incurred. So let's say we did a field trip on the 3rd, and we want to record mileage. So we would say we went to the splash pad, and if you multiply out the mileage rate, it was $21 that they want to do that. By space time percentage is if the provider is using space and time percentage to allocate their expenses. So in this case, we wouldn't want to apply a space time percentage because driving to the splash pad was clearly 100% of a business expense. If instead they were adding in, say, a mortgage payment or cleaning supplies or whatever else it is that is allocated according to space time, then they would click that button. If they wanted to add a receipt in here, then they'd click Choose File and find the scanned document, and then that would be stored in there too. So then they save that, and then of course this information then gets populated into a report that they can use to generate their tax documents at the end of the year. All right, it's time now to talk about claims. So we're going to start with how the provider gets their attendance and meal count and menu information up to you as the sponsor. And then we'll talk about how you as a sponsor would go ahead and process those claims. So first, let's look at the sponsor or the provider perspective. So once a month is over, you can see here it says time to put that claim in. So we click Submit to Sponsor. Select the month. All right, so then here is an overview of the date, the meal type, whether a menu has been entered or not, and then the meal count. You don't have to pay attention to this food production column unless food production records are required in your state. So what the provider does is go down and clicks Check for Errors. So I can't go right to Submit to Sponsor. But I would really recommend that they check for errors first just to see if there's anything that gets flagged as needing correction before they submit it up to you, because then after that it's locked down. So what the system is doing right now is it's going through claims validation checks, and if you want a full list of all of the validation checks that is available, you can just contact us. But it checks to see, for example, is there an enrollment form in there? Is there a menu in there? Are there meal counts without attendance in there? Any number of different things that we check for. If there were any errors, they would show up down here, and the provider would get a chance to make any corrections then before they submitted it up to you. But once they're done, it says meals submitted, and they click submit to sponsor. A little box shows up. It says this will finalize the meals for this month, and you won't be able to change it anymore. Are you sure? And that's actually what we mean. So sometimes people will click the submit to sponsor, and then they will call us and say, I can't edit my meals for this month or for June. How come I can't do that? And it's because they already submitted to sponsor. So this sends all this information up to you as the sponsor and means that the provider can no longer go in and edit any attendance and meal count, menu information, that sort of thing. So you click OK. It runs the check one more time, and it's going to send it up to you as the sponsor. So I'm going to let that finish spinning for just a second, and then I'm going to log in as the sponsor so that you can see what that looks like. All right, so now they're clear down here. There's no more buttons to push. And you can see here it says that your claim is now okay for the last month. So let me log out, and then I'll log back in as me. All right, so up here, this is actually your sponsor dashboard. And this tells you, look, we have claims that we need to process here. There's 280 attendance and meal count records that need to be run through validation. So to process claims, you click on claims, and then you select the month. So here I'm going to select June. Once I click create claims, what's going to happen is it's going to create the claims for any providers who have gone all the way through the steps and submitted to sponsor. So it'll just go through your whole list. So let's say you have 200 homes. It would go through each one of those, and it's going to process a claim for anybody who has sent it up to the sponsor level. So it sort of creates it in bulk. So I'm going to click create claims, and it's going to spin through. So right now it's looking at all the sites, all of your providers, and saying, all right, who has got it submitted to the sponsor and is ready for their claim to be processed. And then it's going to go ahead and run that claims validation again. Now, the provider had the chance to look at the errors. You as a sponsor could take a second look and see if there's any errors. That would require you going into the sites individually and looking to see if there's any errors. That's something that you're certainly, welcome to do, to go in there individually. But if the provider has certified, yep, these are my attendance and meal counts and everything in here is right, then you can just go ahead and create claims. The process takes a little bit to go through because, again, it's going through all of that claims validation again. And if you want to see, there we go. All right, so now we've got childcare home here. It says this is high-level claim information. So there were 99 breakfasts, 89 lunches, and 92 p.m. snacks. If you click on this, you'll get taken back to the summary here. If you made a mistake, you can roll back the claim and start again. That'll go right to scratch. So then here's the claim screen with a list of your claims that are on there. And then of course there are reports related to claims. So if they wanted to see a summary report, they could sure do that. So that's what this would look like. And it looks like 39 of those breakfasts were tier 1, 40 were tier 2, and then snacks and lunches. And then here's the claim estimate, $241.95. All right, the last topic that we are going to cover is monitoring. So the first thing that I am going to demonstrate is how your reviewers can conduct their review visits using our mobile app. And then I'll show you what that looks like from the provider and sponsor perspective once that review has been logged in the mobile app and is viewable on the web app. So first, the mobile app. So we have two mobile apps. My Food Program for reviewers. This is to conduct your paperless reviews of sites. And then this one is our normal attendance and meal count app. So we're going to look for this one with the white background. And I've already got it installed. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up and log in. And then what you'll see here is a list of the names of your providers. This happens to be a test sponsor with a bunch of different site types, as you can see, but then you pick the program that you're going to review. And then we are able to load any form that you want. So the standard state review form, if you want to do that, or if you have a custom form, we can absolutely load that for you too. So you can see a bunch here. I'm just going to pick, this is the Alabama Family Daycare Home Monitoring Form. And then you'll be brought here to a menu. So these are all of the sections of the monitoring form. So your monitor would then just click through all of these and answer the questions. So I'm not going to show you each and every one of these, but you get the idea. You know, you select, you just type in the numbers in here, you answer these questions, and then they're stored in the system. So once your monitor is done with answering all the questions and all the sections, then they click Submit Form, and then that's automatically linked to the site, and you can see it from the web view. So let me show you what a completed visit looks like when you go on the web view. So this is for childcare home, and we click this button Visits over here, and the date here, which form was used. Sponsors have a delete button. Providers don't have a delete button. They can't just get rid of their visits. So you click on this, and here is where you can view the report, all the answers to those questions that your reviewer asked. So here you can see sponsor, agreement number, the trimester, the visit type, all the answers that they typed in are then here. So this is your reviewer report then. And then if you do want to upload any photographs that are associated with that review visit, you can do that here. So we uploaded a photo here of the whole grain rich food item that they were serving. So if the state is asking about how are you collecting the ingredient labels, this would be one way to do it, is that on monitoring visits, you go ahead and take photographs of each of the items that are whole grain rich and being served by the provider. If you did want to just use paper forms, but you still wanted to use our system to, track those and collate those, you can also upload a file here, like a scanned document. Some of our sponsors also choose to put associated corrective action plans in here, and since those are collected maybe at a later time, then they associate it with these visits. So that is what monitoring looks like with my food program.